UK government has just announced that they will be approving a multi-million-pound geoengineering experiment to dim the sun. Is it not dim enough already? So the British government's Advanced Research and Invention Agency, ARIA, is about to drop £50 million into experiments that aim to reflect more sunshine back into space in order to slow the effects of global warming. Now, to do this, one idea is to inject aerosols like sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere so that the tiny particles reflect the sunlight. Another idea is to brighten clouds over the ocean by using ships to spray sea salt into the air to enlarge them. And a third idea is to seed certain types of clouds to allow more of Earth's heat to escape into space. Now, I don't need to tell you guys that trying to artificially alter the climate is highly controversial. However, the lead scientist said that these experiments are on a very small scale, no toxic substances will be released, and that they have strong requirements about the reversibility of effects, if any. They're likening it to when a big volcano erupts. They often blast tiny particles into the stratosphere that blocks some sunlight, and in some cases it actually cools the planet slightly for a year or two. What they're trying to do is somewhat imitate this, but in a controlled way. However, no matter how careful they are, it is not without risks or uncertainties. In fact, in January 2022, over 60 academics published an open letter calling for a ban on developing or deploying solar geoengineering. So the question is, are we at a point with climate change where drastic measures like this need to be taken, or should this be stopped immediately?
Something massive went in front of the sun this morning, and of course, like usual, they're trying to hide it. And this whole thing made people look farther into all of their scans, and they find a whole bunch of footage where they're just straight up turning it off when weird things start happening. And it's actually ridiculous because while this stuff was going on, the Schumann frequency at the same exact time was going insane. I mean, it's crazy. We have these solar flares and we have these auroras going crazy where no one ever sees them while these weird planetary bodies are just flying around the sky. And before the simple-minded try to tell me it's a lunar eclipse, yeah, there is no lunar eclipse or partial lunar eclipse this April, and not until September, actually.
This man claims to be a messenger sent from God, and he is calling Christians and everyone around the world to follow and obey him. He's claiming to be El Mahdi. I mean, he is taking over the internet, and this is just getting out of control.
I am Abdullah, the successor of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, the successor of the Comforter Ahmed, the successor of Simon Peter, the successor of Muhammad, the successor of Jesus Christ. I am the true and legitimate Pope. I am the proof upon the Christians. I am the son of the Muslims through my father, and the son of the Christians and the Jews through my mother. Now, O Christians in the East and the West, hear me and obey. I am a messenger sent to you from Jesus Christ alayhi salam. Paul is false and led you astray. The church is corrupt and no longer upholds the law of God, nor does it defend the oppressed. The papacy has been stolen and the rightful heir has been pushed aside. There is no one else but me that you are obliged to obey. May God be a witness that I have proclaimed.
Spain and Portugal just had a crazy 24 hours. In a story that shows that we probably rely too much on electricity and technology, tens of millions were thrown into darkness when the power failed in the countries. Travel was a mess, flights weren't happening, people had to get off trains that didn't work. Stores, they couldn't take payments, and phones didn't work. So why did this happen? That's the big question. For now, a cyber attack, that's being ruled out. There was also mention of a strong oscillation in the power flow, and Spain's Meteorological Association said it hadn't noticed unusual atmospheric phenomena or sudden temperature fluctuations. The reason still being looked into. While people took that moment to get outside and have a good time, have fun, and socialize, the question I have is, what if this had lasted longer?
Pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack, which would bring to a complete halt to the power supply, transportation, hospital services, our society as a whole.
So riddle me this. Virginia Giuffre, yeah, you know, the Epstein victim, this girl right here, supposedly unalived herself on Friday. But let's just get right into it. This is a public post she put on X. She went on to say, I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I, you know what. I have made this known to my therapist and GP. If something happens to me in the sake of my family, do not let this go away and help me protect them. Too many evil people want to see me quieted. Yikes. Now, not only did this girl have to deal with these sickos, she was hit by a bus and had 4 days to live and ended up making it through. So why she would just unalive herself makes absolutely no sense. Giuffre had 3 children, lived with her husband in Perth in Western Australia. But Western Australia police say Giuffre's death is being investigated, but the early indication is the passing is not suspicious. Okay. Then I almost feel like her family was made to put this out there. They went on to say there are no words that can express the grave loss we feel today with the passing of our sweet Virginia. She was heroic and will always be remembered for her incredible courage and loving spirit. In the end, the toll of abuse is so heavy that it became unbearable for Virginia to handle its weight. We know that she is with the angels. Even that doesn't really sit well with me. Like I said, she was involved with these people. And the fact that she lives in Australia, that we all know the British royal family has heavy ties with, makes me not so surprised about what happened. But this tweet is just chilling.
Who was invested in all those banks that got bailouts back in 2008? That would be BlackRock and their CEO, Larry Fink. Okay, and who's in charge of who got those bank bailouts from the government back in 2008? Federal Reserve, who worked with BlackRock and their CEO, Larry Fink. And who created the collateralized mortgage obligation in the early 80s at First Boston and then was a huge voice for subprime loans, which inevitably led to the housing crisis of 2008? That would be the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink. And when our Treasury Secretary, Henry Paulson, was given $700 billion of toxic asset relief money, hey, what's going on? What did he use it on? Did he just buy toxic assets? No, Paulson instead had shifted focus to injecting capital directly into banks, and 8 of those 9 banks were heavily invested into by BlackRock and their CEO, Larry Fink, who started BlackRock with Blackstone's founder, Peter G. Peterson. And Peter wrote reports for Nixon, and one of those reports would get us off the gold standard, who many people will attribute to the inflation we're seeing today. And who benefits from all these assets, like housing, inflating? Well, that would have to be the world's largest asset holder, and that's BlackRock, their CEO, Larry Fink.
And away we go. So Citibank just had a nationwide outage affecting 200 million Americans. What is going on? Reports say that people can't access their accounts, their checkings, their savings, nothing. And I verified this by going to their website, and it says, we've encountered an issue and we are working to fix the issue. Please return in 10 to 15 minutes. Now, this is coming right off the heels of that massive blackout we had in Europe affecting countries like Spain, Portugal, France, and Belgium. Now, this blackout affected planes, trains, communication, transportation all across these countries. Now, this is all just a coincidence, right? But not so fast, because I may have some answers. Now, would you look at that? So Citibank has something called Citi Token Services. It's used for cash management and trade finance using blockchain and smart contract technology to deliver digital asset solutions for clients, aka crypto. Is it safe to say that this isn't a blackout, but maybe a reset? Just how it was depicted in The Simpsons when I showed you guys this last year in October, where they say it wasn't the end, but a reset. And mind you, Bank of America around this time went down as well. And remember when I showed you guys this movie not too long ago that came out in February called Zero Day about a cyber attack blackout? They always put it in the movies. Not to mention, I also told you guys to watch for this flavor, Baja Midnight, and now we have blackouts. Mountain Dew strikes again. All in all, you guys, they are getting us ready for this new digital system. So if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. To all the newbies, don't get left behind.
I tend to share your views. Nature doesn't like vacuum. And we started working on the digital euro way back. Actually, when I started my term 5.5 years ago. And I'm not claiming, parentality on the digital euro, because my colleague Benoit Cœuré had already committed a speech on this matter before I arrived, but I certainly carried on with that project, and subsequently Fabio Panetta on the board and then Piero Cipollone, who has replaced Fabio, have taken the lead together with a very, very good team, which is focused on accelerating the pace and hopefully campaigning enough with all the stakeholders, meaning European Parliament, meaning European Council, meaning European Commission, so that we can eventually, not put to bed, but put to reality this digital euro. The deadline for us is going to be October of 25, and we are getting ready for that deadline, but we will not be able to move unless the other parties, the stakeholders, as I call them, Commission, Council, and Parliament, actually complete the legislative process, without which we will not be able to move. And I think it is critically important, and it seems to the agnostic or the skeptics, it seems to be more relevant and more of an imperative now than ever before, both on the wholesale and on the retail level, both.
I got invited to a abductee survivor group. There was a guy named Dr. Leah. He removed alien implants from people.
Wow.
Yeah, and in 2016, maybe 14, I got invited to a removal of an implant. Jeremy Corbell was there.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like a fledgling filmmaker. This was his first thing he was filming. I was actually there when they removed the implant.
How big is it?
To be honest with you, it kind of looked like a large kidney stone. It was about the size of a grain of rice. The crazy thing was, when I was there and they tried to remove it, as they were trying to grab it, it was moving.
Wow.
Yeah.
In 1938, there was a gentleman named Harold Burroughs Meyer, and he was a theatrical designer and a sound engineer. And he began developing techniques that would control the emotional response of audiences and to create mass hysteria. And so from there, you have this Rockefeller-Rothschild alliance. What they were doing is not only were they looking at ways to steer the masses, but they wanted to change the standard tuning of A to 440 hertz. So in 1939, they began funding Joseph Goebbels, who was the Nazi propagandist. And at that time, Joseph Goebbels, he wanted to change the standard tuning of A. And so he organized a meeting in London to do that. And they didn't invite any of the French musicians because they were opposed to 440 hertz. And then the organizers of the conference, they interviewed musicians, the instrument makers, the physicists, and then also the sound engineers. And if any of those people were against 440 hertz, then they weren't invited to the conference. So it was all controlled. And as a result, it's not surprising that the standard tuning of A was changed to 440 hertz. And that happened June 1939, just months before World War II broke out. And the timing of that is no coincidence, because 440 hertz is a destructive frequency, and that it can retrain our thoughts towards disharmony, disruption, and disunity.
This is cold water pressure in the kitchen. This is where I fill up water for storage. Those are the things we have to fill up to flush the toilets.
So you can see the sediment from the data center. Wow, and that's just from the water coming out of your faucet?
Yeah. And this is what's in all the pipes.
Just the well itself is probably 20,000, and that's not counting any of the
all the
faucets.
replacement of the fixtures and faucets, toilets, and the lines that come underneath the house. It's overwhelming because you really feel like you are up against this huge wall that you can't penetrate. There's nothing that you can do, and they don't care.
I'm here in Mansfield, Georgia, driving by Meta's new 2 million square foot data center facility. Facilities like this are being used to power things like ChatGPT and other AI tools that are becoming integrated into our daily life.
Data centers, going to be a very hot item.
This entire supercomputer is built to power Grok.
We see data centers as the most exciting asset class.
Meta is building a 2 gigawatt plus data center that is so large it would cover a significant part of Manhattan.
But data centers come with big costs, from light and noise pollution to the environmental impacts to the potential rising costs of energy bills. These facilities put extraordinary demand on the power grid and require entirely new infrastructure.
so